Welcome to the Deep Dive.
We're bringing you our essential briefing for the second week of October 2025.
And our focus today is squarely on the Indo-Pacific region.
That's right, a lot of moving parts there. Internal political shifts colliding with some pretty significant military posturing.
So our mission here is to really synthesize the intelligence from the past week.
Yes, and provide you with an impartial look at what it all means. We see sort of three key areas.
Right.
First, the political changes in Japan after their election. Second, the ongoing military dynamics in the South China Sea.
Always a hot spot.
Always. And third, some important signals coming out of North Korea.
We'll aim to give you the facts, look at what the key players might be thinking, and offer some calm, professional analysis. No hype, just the data.
And before we dive in, we do want to mention that this briefing, which pulls together traditional news, military intel, even social media sentiment, was generated by Stylo News.
Stylo News, the AI-powered news application.
Exactly. And we thank our sponsor, ProWave AI, for making this deep dive possible.
All right, let's start with Japan. They just had a major general election concluded on October 6th.
Yes, and the outcome was a victory for Sanae Takaichi. She's a prominent figure in the LDP, the ruling party.
And this isn't just a leadership change, is it? It could mean shifts in Japan's economic direction.
That's the immediate focus for analysts. She's widely described as a, quote, fiscal dove.
A fiscal dove. Okay, what does that signal for, policy?
Well, it suggests a likely turn towards more fiscal stimulus, government spending, and continuing that very accommodative monetary policy, not someone focused on immediate budget cuts, perhaps.
And the market certainly seemed to like that idea.
They did. The Nikkei stock index surged, actually hit a record high. Investors seem optimistic about her economic plans, at least in the short term.
Betting on growth, then?
Seems like it. But, we have to balance that optimism.
How so?
Well, while it's continuity for the LDP, Japanese politics is rarely simple. Analysts are still pointing to those persistent divisions within the party.
Right, internal factions.
Yeah.
That could make pushing through big legislation tricky.
It certainly could, especially when it comes to debates on security policy or deeper structural reforms.
And what about the elephant in the room? Japan's huge public debt.
Yeah.
Does stimulus address that?
It doesn't directly, no. That remains a massive long-term challenge. Her government faces this difficult balancing act: stimulate the economy now, but somehow manage those long-term fiscal sustainability worries.
A tough position. Any other policy signals?
Yes, one clear area seems to be energy. Early indications suggest a renewed, pretty significant focus on nuclear power, expanding capacity for energy security reasons.
Interesting. Okay, let's shift focus now from internal politics to, external displays of force. North Korea.
Indeed. The Korean peninsula remains tense. Pyongyang just celebrated the 80th anniversary of the Workers' Party, big events on October 9th and 10th.
And Kim Jong-un used this occasion to, reiterate his main strategy?
He did. He vowed to build the best socialist paradise, which sounds familiar, but crucially reaffirmed the Bunjin policy.
That's the one focusing on both nuclear weapons and economic development simultaneously.
Exactly, pursuing both paths at once. But what was perhaps more telling was the international guest list.
Ah, yes. Who showed up?
Two very high-profile figures, not from traditional allies. We saw Chinese Premier Li Qiang there, and also former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev.
Wow. Li Qiang and Medvedev. What message does that send?
It sends a pretty clear message of a strengthening anti-Western alignment, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. China showing continued support, maybe seeing North Korea as a buffer. And Russia, perhaps looking for resources, munitions even.
That's certainly the speculation. Medvedev's presence underscores that connection, especially given Russia's ongoing conflict needs. It's a very visible display of solidarity against international pressure.
And that solidarity was, predictably, followed by a show of military might.
A classic move. A major military parade showcasing their latest hardware, including ICBMs, the intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Aimed squarely at.
Well, the messaging is clear. Designed to potentially reach the U.S. mainland and, of course, South Korea.
So, strength first, diplomacy maybe later.
That seems to be the consistent pattern. Interestingly, though, amid all this military flexing, Kim did sort of hint at maybe talking to Washington again.
Oh. Under what conditions?
Well, here's the catch. It's heavily conditional. He said diplomacy could only resume if the U.S. drops its demand for complete, irreversible denuclearization.
But isn't that the same condition they've had for years? Does this hint mean anything new?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It suggests that while he might want sanctions relief, the nuclear program itself is non-negotiable. It's seen as their ultimate security guarantee.
So the hint might be more about trying to appear reasonable, maybe divide international opinion.
That could be part of it. While signaling they'll only negotiate as a de facto nuclear state, it puts the onus for compromise entirely on the U.S. side.
Okay, let's pivot again to the wider Indo-Pacific. The South China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, things seem to be heating up there too.
Definitely. Maritime military competition feels like it's reaching a new peak. It really underscores that central strategic contest between China and the Western powers for regional influence.
And the West has been responding.
Quite visibly. The U.S., for instance, publicly announced an Ohio-class nuclear submarine docking at Subic Bay in the Philippines back in late September.
An Ohio-class sub, that's a serious piece of hardware. Carries a lot of long-range missile capability, right?
A massive amount. It's an unmistakable signal of U.S. strike capability and its commitment to the Philippines alliance.
And the UK has been active too.
Yes, demonstrating commitment to freedom of navigation. HMS Richmond went through the Taiwan Strait, and the carrier, HMS Prince of Wales, has been operating in the South China Sea.
Actions that Beijing likely doesn't appreciate.
Not at all. And reports confirm these moves prompted immediate and quite sharp Chinese military surveillance, including simulated missile attacks by Chinese forces.
Simulated attacks. That sounds risky. The chance for miscalculation must be quite high.
Acutely high. These are crowded waters.
Now, looking at it from China's perspective, how are they responding beyond surveillance?
They're showcasing their own naval power in a big way. The PLA Navy deployed 2 aircraft carriers, the new Fujian and the Shandong, down at Yulin Naval Base on Hainan Island.
2 carriers at Yulin. That's a significant concentration of force right there in the South China Sea.
It is. And beyond the big ships, they're consistently pushing their territorial claims using those gray zone tactics we hear about.
Right. The U.S. Senate mentioned that recently. What do these tactics actually involve on the water? It sounds a bit abstract.
It does, but it's very real. Gray zone means actions designed to coerce or assert control without crossing the threshold into conventional warfare. So it avoids triggering defense treaties.
So not Navy ships firing, but...
Exactly. It often involves flooding an area with, say, Chinese Coast Guard vessels or maritime militia, even fishing boats, acting in coordination. They'll use harassment, block other countries' ships, use water cannons.
Against Filipino vessels, for instance.
Precisely. We saw that just this past week near Scarborough Shoal, or Huangyan Island as China calls it, the Philippines sent out government vessels to resupply their fishing boats.
A support mission for their own people.
Yes, about 15 Philippine government ships supporting over 100 fishing boats, and they faced harassment from around 34 Chinese vessels, plus surveillance aircraft, intimidation without firing shots.
It really highlights the stakes for countries in the region.
It does, and it's pushing some countries closer together. Former Philippine Defense Minister Lorenzana recently spoke about the need for security cooperation between the Philippines and Taiwan, saying they share a common fate.
That alignment is getting more formalized too, isn't it, with the allies?
Yes, we've seen the U.S. permanently deploy MQ-9 Reaper drones in South Korea at Kunsan Air Base, specifically for better surveillance over the region.
More eyes in the sky.
And importantly, recent statements from the U.S., Japan, and South Korea together have explicitly mentioned concerns about Taiwan Strait stability. They're institutionalizing that shared concern, making the deterrence message collective and louder.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all this. What are the key players trying to achieve? What's the sentiment?
Right. Looking at Beijing's intentions, it seems multi-layered. Domestically, managing party issues, economic pressures. Externally, clearly asserting sovereignty claims in the South China Sea and around Taiwan. And critically, accelerating military modernization.
And they're learning from other conflicts.
Very much so. Analysts say China has been intensely studying the war in Ukraine, not just the tech side drones, multi-domain ops, but also the challenges of logistics, and importantly, the impact of determined defenders.
And on the other side, the U.S. and its allies.
Their priorities seem consistent. Uphold freedom of navigation, deter any unilateral attempts to change the status quo, especially regarding Taiwan, and strengthen those security alliances, Philippines, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea.
We also saw India making a move.
Yes, India increased its naval presence slightly in the South China Sea with the INS Sahyadri, seen by many as a way to counterbalance China's growing influence there.
Now, what about the wider mood? You mentioned social media analysis from Stylo News sources.
Yes, drawing from traditional outlets like Reuters, CNN, but also platforms like X. The sentiment picture is pretty stark.
How so?
Well, looking at hashtags like hashtag China, hashtag Taiwan, hashtag South Chinesa, hashtag Philippines, the analysis shows sentiment is overwhelmingly negative towards China's actions. We're talking 65% to 85% negative.
That high. What are people saying?
The common themes in the criticism are that the actions are expansionist, destabilizing, violating international norms.
And the positive sentiment?
It's minimal, around 9% to 20%. And interestingly, that positive sentiment is almost always linked to accounts identified as state-aligned or state media outlets.
So outside of official narratives, there's a lot of skepticism and criticism, fairly polarized.
Very much so. It reflects a deeply contested information environment.
Okay, looking ahead then, what should we be watching for in the near future?
Diplomatically, keep an eye on the U.S. Senate. They're deliberating policies to strengthen the Indo-Pacific strategy. Also, the upcoming ASEAN summit in Malaysia is crucial. They'll be discussing that long-delayed South China Sea Code of Conduct.
Always a key discussion point, militarily.
Well, there are scheduled China-Malaysia joint military exercises from October 15th to 23rd. Those are worth watching for insights into regional military diplomacy.
And the flashpoints.
Continue to watch those Philippine supply missions near Scarborough Shoal. They remain high risk. And of course, any further PLA deployments or large-scale joint operations near Taiwan.
Got it. And quickly, a note on weather. It always plays a role.
It certainly does, especially for maritime operations and regional preparedness. We're tracking Typhoon Halong, moving north towards Japan. Looks like a limited direct threat to Taiwan, but it will bring cooler weather and some needed rain there.
Any other?
Yes. Typhoon Madmum is impacting the Guangdong and Hainan coasts near where those Chinese carriers are based, causing rough seas. And another system, Tropical Disturbance 93W, or MADAM, could bring rain and heat risks to Taiwan and the Philippines. Disaster preparedness remains key.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, perhaps a final thought for our listeners to consider.
Well, think about this. China is clearly studying the Russia-Ukraine war very carefully. Logistics, drones, defender resolve, they're absorbing those lessons.
Yeah.
But the strategic challenge China would face in a potential Taiwan scenario is fundamentally different, isn't it? It involves crossing a significant maritime barrier, 100 miles of water, under likely intense surveillance and potentially hostile conditions.
A sea crossing is vastly different from a land invasion.
Completely. So the big question for military planners everywhere is, how well can lessons from a protracted land war in Europe be applied to a complex, high-risk amphibious operation across the Taiwan Strait? The sea changes everything: logistics, vulnerability, the defender's advantage, something to ponder.
Indeed. And this comprehensive briefing, pulling together intelligence from traditional news, official reports, and that social media sentiment analysis, was constructed by Stylo News.
That's right. And if you want to get your own AI-powered news intelligence on demand to stay ahead of global events with this kind of depth, we really encourage you to subscribe to Stylo News.
You can find them at www.stylonews.com. That's STYLOnews.com.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the source material today.
We really appreciate you tuning in. Do follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms for ongoing updates and analysis. Have a good day.